everybody, and welcome to Grow For It. Our goal here is to highlight leaders in the personal development coaching industry and give you a glimpse into what's working and what challenges are being faced along the way. That way you can both learn and grow in your business and personal lives as well. Today we have a very special guest with us, Ted Davis. Ted's been in the personal development coaching industry for 28 years, he said. So he's got a wealth of wisdom and experience to share with you guys today. Thank you very much, Ted, for joining us.
Well, thank you, Nathan. It's a pleasure to join you, and let me congratulate you as you get started in your podcast business. I understand this is your first week of doing these interviews, so I pray the Lord blesses you in this endeavor. And as someone who is now in my 28th year, I just applaud and wish you all the best as you get started.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That means a lot. Would you mind going ahead and giving kind of an introduction of yourself, how you got into the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Also, before I hand it over to you, I did want to say, I noticed you served in the military for a while in the Army. So thank you very much for your service.
Well, thank you. I was very blessed. My history is about leadership. So I often tell people, particularly when I introduce my podcast, I talk about being a student, a practitioner, or a trainer, a teacher in leadership for the last 50 plus years, 55 years maybe, because it's really started when I was a elementary school kid. I grew up in Binghamton, New York, south central part of the state. And so when I first got started being exposed to the idea of being leadership, being a leader, being a person with responsibility, believe it or not, it was as a patrol boy. Now, you may never have heard that term, but a patrol boy back in the 60s, we would be like, today you see when kids are going to school and in the school zones, and you've got a lady or sometimes a man, but more often I've seen a woman. But anyway, you've got an adult with a stop sign who walks out in the middle, holds up the stop, and then the kids go across the street, right? Back in my day, back in the 60s, it was us patrol boys. And we would each be assigned a corner on the pathways because we all walked to school. I think I had a walk of about less than half a mile. And so I had a intersection that I was responsible for, and I had to pay attention to the traffic and stop people and only let them cross when it was safe and so forth. But I often goes back to that and say, where did I get started as leader? Well, one of the things as I reflect on it that I think was very special about training leaders was they trained us how to do it. It was always instructive in the positive way. Here's how to do it. And to the best of my knowledge, they never talked about what not to do. It was the affirmative. Here's what you do. So they set the expectation of here's the correct way to do that. So I was very fortunate, had that. I did some leadership, counseling, day camp counseling for YMCA when I was a kid. And then in high school was, a team captain for both football and for track, class president, normal stuff you'd get in high school, which is great. But probably, one of the best experiences I ever had was as a young man, I got to go to West Point. And for 4 years was going through an indoctrination, and I say that in the most positive ways. What is a leader? What is leadership? How do you mold yourself? How do you motivate others? So it was a great experience back in the early 70s. I graduated in 1974. And then I was very blessed. I had a great 22-year career in the Army. Working with the American soldiers was a phenomenal experience. American soldiers then, as they are today, absolutely marvelous young men and women. And so 22 years, served in Germany, served in Korea, many places throughout the United States. But then in 1996, it was time to retire. And so it was time to move on. And I was very fortunate, got a start job as a civilian as a vice president of international marketing and sales for a manufacturing company. That didn't last all that long. The position was eliminated, so then I got into coaching, consulting, and training, and I've been at it now for 28 years. So the short summary of that is the Lord has been gracious. I have met a lot of wonderful people, was mentored by good people, and have had the awesome pleasure of, again, being a student, practitioner, and trainer for leadership.
So if I can dive a little deeper into that, what was the process like starting in the industry? Were you working for someone else? Did you start out by launching your own company? How did that come about?
Yeah, no, I didn't work for anybody else. When I retired from active duty and had my first job in the private sector, while I was still in active duty, what brought me here to Leavenworth, Kansas, which is where I am now, I was the chief of a strategic studies branch in our Command and General Staff College. And so I was training strategists. I was training Army strategists. And so it was a lot about the skills of a strategist, how the analytical, the synthesis, the problem solving, being able to deep dive into understanding forces and trends, understanding what got us today, what does the future look like, all sorts of things like that. And so when I retired, it was a matter of taking those frameworks, that vocabulary, that skill set, particularly the mental, intellectual skill set, and being able to transfer them into the civilian sector where the scope is different, a little bit different words, but still the mental skills, the emotional skills, actually, because it takes both. It takes both emotional and cognitive skills to be able to think in long terms, to be able to understand and connect. What are the objectives? What are the means? What are the pathways, the ways we're going to get things done? So anyway, I was making that switch, and I was doing a pretty good job in my first job as vice president. But when the job went away, because they eliminated the position, a friend of mine who I'd brought in to do some consulting work for me said, "Hey, you need to get in consulting, and I'll help you get the first job." And he did. And I've cursed his name ever since. Not really. Not really. I only say that as a joke. No, I absolutely appreciate it. And so it was a big leap. But when I jumped into consulting, coaching, and training, and it was really consulting first, I didn't have any clientele. And I was just trying to sort out. And I think this is a lesson to be learned if somebody is getting into the business, consulting, coaching, or training. I did not have an idea of what the market was because I just hadn't done that yet. And so I was just kind of waiting to find out where's the opportunity, and I'll chase that opportunity, I'll learn what it is, and I'll go after it. And so I was responsive to the market, and it's worked for me. I'm still 28 years into the business. I think a better way, though, is if you have expertise. So it probably potentially could have been better to go work for somebody in the industry for a few years. Really, for an example, I was about 2 years into my business and really frustrated because I'm trying to find clients, trying to understand what is the market really want of me, how do I brand myself, all that stuff. And I met this lady at a conference or something, and she was like in her first year and was doing $4 million worth of business. And oh my gosh, I was thinking, how terrible am I? How in the world? Yeah, I mean, how did she pull that off? $4 million in 1 year, or first year? Well, come to find out, she was working for somebody else in the field she was in. She was in marketing. And when she left that company and started her own, $4 million worth of business went with her. And all she did was have them come over, and immediately, I mean, she started off the blocks in that way. And I don't begrudge her. It was a neat thing, but it just highlights the difference between how I started versus how she did. So I think that if you're going to start in this field, if you can get started by working with somebody else initially, to learn the ropes, to learn the market, figure out what exactly is your passion within it? And is there some unique thing you're going to offer? I think that's a better way to get started. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. You started developing your leadership skills early. It all started with holding that stop sign.
It really did. I had not thought about that for years until it was a podcast a year ago. Somebody asked me, and that was the first thing that came to mind. I said, wow, I haven't thought about that in decades, but as I reflected on it, that really was kind of the start point of leadership, and it's just grown after, since then. And then it's become obviously a passion because leadership is about the relationship. Leadership is about human behavior, and it's about influencing people to accomplish things. It's influencing people so that the organization, which means people working together. I mean, an organization is people working together to deliver something of value. And so you've got to be able to do that in such a way that you positively influence people to, for example, my definition of leadership. Leadership is the art of mobilizing and energizing others to want to strive for and achieve shared aspiration. And so to me, leadership is an art, not a science. Now, there is science behind it. I mean, it is human behavior, ergo, you need to be able to study psychology, anthropology, all these ologies that explain human behavior. Because I think, first, if you're going to be a leader, I encourage you to think of yourself as a professional. You got to think of yourself as a professional because, number one, in a profession, you're selected. There's some selection criteria. And that could be as simple as your boss thinks you've got some potential. I'm going to put you in a leadership position or a management position. And that's going to be the start point. So you're a young, emerging professional leader. So number one, there was a selection process. In my case, there was a 4-year program going through West Point and then being commissioned, a very formal process to do that. So that's number one, there's selection. Number two, there's a body of knowledge that's unique that you got to study. Well, I think if you're a leader, you got to study human behavior. You really have to understand what motivates people because at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. So in my definition of leadership, it is the art, which means you've got to make decisions. You've got to make choices about how you're engaging with people. How do you employ the science? It's just like an artist. I'm sure you probably have seen Bob Ross, the guy who does landscape, frizzy hair kind of guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, great. I love watching him. He's so incredible. So, I mean, we could watch him do that and how he creates a sense of depth. And we could critique how he uses hues and colors and layers and all this other stuff to create symmetry and positioning things and so forth. So I can critique it after having watched lots and lots of his shows, but that is not what makes me an artist. So knowing the science behind it doesn't make you an artist. It is the decisions that you have to make that you get involved with. And so when I say leadership is the art, one of my favorite books on leadership is Kouzes and Posner's Leadership Challenge. And great book on leadership. And in the first edition, they talked about leadership. They say people do not willingly follow a position. They follow people engaged in a process. And that leadership is a performing art. And I just love that image. As a leader, you're in a performance art. It's how you behave. It's what you say, how you say, all these things. It is you engaged with a relationship with the people you're trying to influence. Number one, it's an art. And then I say mobilize and energize, meaning mobilize, you got to position people. You got to position them at the right place, right time, with the right stuff so they can go do the right thing. And then you energize. You bring the spark, you bring the energy and the enthusiasm and the inspiration so people can move forward. So that people choose, because that's ultimately what you want to do is cause people to make a choice that they're going to struggle. They're going to strive for shared aspirations. which means as a leader, you're responsible for communicating and clearly define what are our aspirations? What are we working towards together? And of course, you use things like a mission statement, a vision statement, your organizational culture, so forth. All that stuff goes into inspiring people with shared aspirations that then they strive for. So in encouraging leaders, whether it's in coaching them or training them through online curriculum that I'm developing, or in the classroom, I've done a lot of MBA classes teaching leaders. But it's helping people acquire, number one, the knowledge, and then hopefully causing them to have the experiences that will allow them to grow in the wisdom. What is the wisdom they need? Not just simply the knowledge, but how do they get into the wisdom? I don't know if that's a subject you want to go down the rabbit hole or...
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tie it into what we discussed slightly before the call briefly. But we talked about the fact that you're a Christian, you believe in God. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you incorporate that into your career and the way that you coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think whatever your faith is, no faith, which is a faith, whether it's atheism or some other Hinduism or whatever, all that comes with a worldview. And in that worldview is, how do you see people? And as a Christ follower, believing in God, believing that we are created by God in his image, how do you see people? And I think it's important because I see people as, again, created by God. We have to respect everyone's dignity. You have to treat them with respect. You may be very direct, may be very bold, frontive sometimes, because you have to do that. But at the end of the day, do you respect people and do you want to see them do the best? So I think that as I understand how to live out the Christian faith, how to be obedient, for example, the first and second greatest commandments, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and then love others as yourself. I think and then upon those two, everything else hangs. So you got to start with those two, and then, okay, how does the world work based on those two commandments? Well, as a Christ follower, one of the things we should be responsible for is sharing the love of God with people, with everybody, loving them. And so in loving them, I think is ensuring that people have the opportunity to do their best. And it goes right back to my definition of leadership when I talk about mobilizing. How do I position you? How do I put you in the right place at the right time to do the right thing with the right stuff so you get the right outcome? And it's seeing people, even when they're at their worst, realizing that there is a dignity. And so it's how I try to lead, not that I've always been perfect at it, but try to see people through God's eyes, and then leading accordingly.
Yeah, very well said. What would you say has been your proudest moment of running your company so far?
Someone asked me that a couple of months ago, and I was surprised at my first response because I hadn't thought about it for a while. Early on, probably this is 25 years ago, I guess it was. I was working in an organization called TEC, the Executive Committee. And what it was is I was called the chairman. It was kind of a combination of being a coach and a meeting facilitator and a program planner and so forth. Basically, it was a peer group. It was a peer group program. Marvelous organization exists today, something called Vista. It's a wonderful organization. Anyway, this is not too much after, maybe a year and a half after I retired from active duty, and I'm still trying to find my way. Now, I knew how to think like a strategist, but I was still learning the nuts and bolts of how to do that in the private sector. And I was learning how to be a coach to CEOs, even though I hadn't been in their position, at least not yet. How do I ask good questions? How do I be a coach? And I think that's possible. how do you be a good coach? By asking good questions, by listening, by helping people go deep. And so one of the members in the tech group that I had, phenomenal businessman, unbelievable, self-made millionaire. His company had gone like 60 continuous months of net increase in gross revenue. 60 months, every month going up. Just incredible. And I was just in awe of this guy. And I came to meet with him on one of our coaching sessions. And as I walked into the seat there at the conference table so we could chat, he said, I am so glad you're here. I've just been waiting for you to come here. I got some issues and I want to pick your brain. And it stunned me. And I just thought, okay, I have finally gotten here. Now I've arrived. Dennis wants my opinion. He wants to hear what I have to say. And so it sounds simple, but it really was, I think one of my brightest moments is okay, yes, I do have something to offer. And he did that. So it's been that. And then one of the companies that I worked with, I'd been working with them for about 5, 6, 7 years maybe. And worked with them a total of 20 years. But about the 5, 7 year mark, something like that. The CEO, this guy, another wonderful businessman, knew more than I could ever hope to understand. But as we were having this all-staff meeting, and he got up to talk about what was making a difference, and he sung my praises and then talked about what was that I brought to the organization, what I had taught, and so forth. And so, realizing that what I was sharing, what I had to teach, the kind of coaching that I offered, people saw it of value and would speak well of it. So, at least those are 2 incidents that speak to mind right now.
Very cool. Those must have given you some good confidence and validation moving forward after you experienced those.
Yeah. And I think that's, if you're going to be in consulting and coaching and training business, you've got to, you got to remain humble, I think, but you got to be confident. And those two things, confidence and humility, are not mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, they go together. So I think you got to remain humble. Humble just means you don't think about yourself all the time. It doesn't mean you don't think well of yourself. It just means you don't have to think about yourself all the time, because you're thinking about how do you serve others. And so I think that's been one of the joys is seeing other people, particularly when they get it, when they start acting on the changes of behavior that are necessary for them to positively influence other people. Because that's ultimately, again, what you do as a leader is you are positively influencing people. And you're, as a leader manager, and really you got to be both. You got to be a leader and a manager. And you've got to be able to do that in such a way that you can deal with both change and chaos, because those two things are constantly around. I mean, every change is always there. Markets change, the political, economic, social, technological, all those issues, they're in a flux quite a bit. The buyer behavior changes. The work base, the workforce development, that's changing quite a bit. And so there's chaos in the marketplace as people compete. There's chaos in the marketplace as uneven distribution of resources, uneven innovation, I think, sometimes. So how do you both deal with chaos, deal with change, but yet bring stability to the workplace? Because people need some bit of change, some rhythm, but you've got to be able to pace the rhythm of change in your organization at a pace that your people can feel comfortable with. People need, and it's going to be in varying amounts, but at some level, people need stability. Some need a lot, some need just a little bit. Some people need a lot of change. Other people want to just do just a little bit, so it keeps it interesting to them. So understanding your people, and I think it goes back to one of the most fundamental things we have to do as leaders is always keep in mind that every organization delivers something of value to the marketplace. Now, I'm not sure where I first heard that. I wish I could say I was the author of that kind of cliche now, but I'm not. So I'm not sure where I got it from. But I think it's so, it's one of those statements that when you hear it, it seems so obvious, but why didn't I think of it? But it's so obvious, but yet profound. Every organization exists to deliver something of value to the marketplace. Every one of them. And whether it's a school, it's a church, it's a marketplace, you go get your groceries, it's the hospital, it's the clinic, whatever it is, we exist because we have a mission statement, we have a value proposition. Here's what we're going to commit. Here's the promise we're going to make. We're going to deliver something of value to the marketplace. It could be a product, it could be a service, or it's a combination of those. And so to be able to deliver that value, we need people performing a series of tasks. There are some people who are right at the point of the spear who are actually doing it, like in construction. There are construction workers, electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, and so forth, carpenters. They're at the point of where it's delivered. You go to a grocery stores, they're at the point of where the goods and services are delivered. But then behind the scenes, there's other people who indirectly orchestrate all that. So the organization, in order to deliver this value, has people engaged in processes where their performances come together in an orchestrated way to be able to deliver that value. And it cascades throughout the organization. So as leaders, we've got to be able to keep that in mind. What is the value? What is the performance? To get that performance, what's the organizational structure? How do I position people, assign them duties and responsibilities, give them authority, give them equipment, make sure they have all the training? So from the value that's delivered, with the performance that it's needed, then the organizational structure that we put that together to equip people to do that. And then, of course, how do we provide leadership and management to guide all that process, to set a course for the future, for recognizing people's performance, making sure that employees have an opportunity to succeed. So I've been rambling. You have any other thoughts? Anything else you want me to cover?
No, that's great. That's really helpful. That's a lot of wisdom that you just shared there. Very valuable. I think everyone can take something from that. I guess in your personal business, what is one thing that you would say is driving the most growth for you right now?
That's an interesting question, because I've been looking at that for the 28 years. For me, and the size of the growth I wanted and the kind of business, it was all word of mouth. And I had tried various types of advertising, whether it's print and media, various programs. And none of those ever worked as well as just simply word of mouth, having clients talk about and recommend me to other people and recommend people to me and so forth. But I think at this point, I was just seeing somebody going over a chart today, that as you grow, there can come a point where you've kind of maxed out the referrals, and then you're going to sort of slide off unless you do something to twist it and make it go up. And I think I'm at that point this year, at that point where I can't rely just on referrals. So I'm in the process now of evaluating how do I, even though I've been in it 28 years, people keep asking me, when am I going to retire? And my answer is, I don't find the word retirement in the Bible. So I'm at it for as long as I can keep going. But I think I'm at that point where you kind of want to do an inflection and kind of rebrand, if you will, and then come out with new offerings and a new advertising to the marketplace. And so I've been at this kind of reassessment and evaluation for about 6-7 months now. And one of the things that's really got my passion right now and how I want to recraft is the idea of helping leaders unlock the wisdom they need to meet their biggest challenge. And so understanding what in the world is wisdom, because it's not just simply that you acquire knowledge. And I think that's been a lot of my focus is both I learn. I mean, I have a love of learning, so I'm constantly studying. In my mid-60s, I started working on a doctorate program. So I earned that in my, by the time I was 69. And so I just keep acquiring knowledge, learning new things, and then apply it. But I want to be able to apply it now in brighter ways, new ways. So, because I think wisdom is not just simply the application of knowledge, which is kind of a simple way of people describing wisdom, and it's not inaccurate, but it takes more than that. It's what's your source of resilience? What is your passion? What is your courage? And I think it takes courage to be wise, because you got to know when to take risks, how to take risks, how to evaluate them. And I think it's, I've been playing around it all the time, because as a strategist, you did analysis, then you did synthesis, and you did all sorts of cost benefit analysis and best, do courses of action, evaluate what you could. So there was always that, but it's taking it to a newer level, at a more profound level, where I think the communication has to be cleaner, crisper. You've got to, again, as I said, you've got to be able to figure out, okay, what is the constant change that's swirling around me? What's the chaos that's swirling around me? And how am I going to navigate through that? So anyway, that's the question that got me on that path is, kind of where am I now? Where am I now after 28 years? I still want to stay fresh. So I'm kind of repackaging my services and how I want to do it. And really kind of want to focus on wisdom. And then I'm going to repackage, and I'm in the process of talking with some marketing agencies now, how we're going to package that and be able to share that message in a compelling way. So you'll be hearing about it in the next few months.
Great. That's fantastic. I think you kind of already maybe dipped into this one a little bit, but I'll ask it still anyway in case you want to expand upon it. What would you say is the hardest part in running your business right now? Well,
I think the hardest part is making that change. I think the self-reflection of, okay, because it's going to take personal change as well as business model change. So I'm changing my business model in some ways. And then really absorbing and like I mentioned earlier, when I started off, I didn't have any defined services. I didn't have any packages. Now I do. Now I have 6 different ways of packaging. Here's just coaching. Here's coaching and training. Here's coaching and strategic planning and all sorts of team coaching. And so there's whatever the issues are, I've got a series of products and services to match what those needs are. So I went from none to now I've got some pretty robust, but it's time to repackage them and look at them in a new light. So I think it's even after 28 years, being reflective and saying, okay, what's going to be different what's different about the future, and how am I going to be different at it? And so I think that's one of the messages. Don't be afraid to evaluate and say, okay, is it time to do, am I at an inflection point that I've got to change? And I just come to the conclusion that, okay, what's worked for the last 28 years, once I got into a rhythm and I had a pace and things were going really well, they've trailed off. I've come to realize, okay, it's probably business does run in cycles. That's where I'm at. So how am I, rather than keeping going down, how do I reflect it and go up? And I think it's to repackage. And so I think that's what I would share with people who get into this business is that, one, get a coach. I mean, coaches do need coaches. So get one, and then be open to periodically, every few years. Okay, am I on pace? What's working? What's not working? What's happening in the marketplace? How do I stay relevant? Because that's, I think, ultimately what we want to do is to, again, deliver something of value. And so what I delivered of value 5 years ago, it may not be the same thing that's needed now. And so how do I repackage that? Because particularly now with AI, spreading like gangbusters, how are you going to use that tool? Because it's a tool. I don't think it's going to totally replace human beings. It's rather how do forward-thinking individual people learn how to use this tool and leverage it for everyone's benefit.
And so to go off that a little bit, how do you see technology, AI, automation, all of that playing a role in your growth of your business in the next few years?
Well, I think it's going to accelerate how quickly I can turn around content. AI lacks social skills. AI is not a social thing. It's not totally accurate yet. So I think you've got to be able to, it's going to get better and better. You got to keep pace with that, but realize it cannot replace human beings because AI doesn't have emotion. And people are wired for emotions. I mean, God created human beings for both emotion and reasoning, and those two things are supposed to work together. Now, that doesn't mean that we've mastered it. I think that's part of our problems in the world. We've not mastered how do I be both emotional and rational at the same time. I got to have emotions that inform reasoning and reasoning that inform emotion. That's what makes us unique. That's how God created us. AI isn't going to do that. It's not, I don't know if it ever can be emotional. So it can't provide emotion. It can't provide the social skills to do that. So I think to be able to use AI, again, what does AI do? Massive amount of data that it can sort so quickly and package and give ideas and so forth. It still has got to be checked. It's not 100% accurate yet. So I think that as you master that, your ability to gather information, to gather courses of action is going to be better, quicker. Perhaps it'll get more accurate, but at the same time, it's going to take human intervention, I think, to make the final decision. So how do we use those tools so that we do a better job of evaluating our courses of action so that we make more informed decisions where our human intuition and emotion must come to play?
Yeah, that's very interesting that you say that. And I think even today, if you think about purchasing and just that whole process and what goes into that, it's still pretty easy for us to buy smaller things online. But when you're paying for a very large purchase, most of the time people still want to see it in person or be there with a realtor or be at the car dealership or things like that. So there's still a human element that's still desired, even though AI is a very powerful tool and has taken over a lot. There's still some elements that people crave that human touch to it.
Absolutely. I don't know if you ever saw it. There was an animated movie several years ago now called We, WEII. I think that was.
I'm not sure if I saw that one.
It was. I thought it was very good because it was about kind of apocalyptic. The machines have taken over, and people, and it's got the one person you see in it is this guy who's he's managing a starship or something, and he's fat and lazy, can't even walk across the room, and because it's all the machines doing it, and something happens, and now the machines aren't doing it, and this guy's not equipped anymore. But anyway, I thought it was interesting, and it highlighted this little obsolete computer or so forth. He got hung up on watching a TV that had a bunch of old TV shows on recycling, and so he was watching the Three Stooges and other videos of that era, and becoming wildly influenced by human behavior. But anyway, so as you say that, I'd recommend go back and look at that movie We as a commentary.
I think you're referring to WALL-E, the Disney movie.
Yeah, maybe it was WALL-E. Yeah, thank you. It was WALL-E. That's it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, that is a really good one. It definitely highlights some of the downsides of over relying on technology there.
Yeah, it was.
Sure. What about for you? Where do you see your business within the next 12 to 18 months? How do you see that as being different?
Well, the next
from
12
where
to
you're at
18
now?
months, two things, my business goals for the next 6 months is to launch my online training platform. So I want to put an online training platform for leadership. And mine will be slightly different again, because particularly starting off, the emphasis on what does it take to be a professional leader? Because I really have a passion about trying to convince people that if you're going to be a leader, think of yourself that way. Excuse me. Just like an attorney, an accountant, whomever, they've got to continue to study their profession. Well, as a leader, you got to constantly study your profession. I mean, I've been at this now, for 60 years, and I still study. In fact, I just bought another book today. And my 2,000 book library, bought another today because it's got some ideas that are expressed in a new way. I don't think there's anything new under the sun. We just repackage them. But it's a new packaging that I think gets excited. So anyway, so I want to launch a platform that gives another perspective. I know it's a saturated market, but maybe I can get a little sliver into that with some good leadership training and to make it useful. So that people really understand I'm a professional and this is how I behave. It'll be very much focused on understanding human behavior. So that's number one. And then number two, I want to less travel. Now that I'm getting older, my body is falling apart. Travel is not as enjoyable as it used to be. So I want to go to mastermind groups, and bring groups of people, non-competitors who have similar ambitions and goals about their business, and then facilitate them working together to move forward. So I think that's a best use of my time. And this idea of sharing wisdom and inspiring people to search out and discover the wisdom they need, I think mastermind groups are going to be the key for me. So that's going to be in the next 6 to 12 months. That'll be what I'll be doing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great.
So if you're interested, you can be in the first group.
All right. I'm interested. That sounds very interesting. What do you have in mind for your masterminds? Have you fleshed that out at all yet?
No, I want to have a couple, for entrepreneurs who are within either they're starting out or they've just been started in the last 18 months or so. They're still hungry. They still are trying to learn what it means to be an entrepreneur. So I think I want to create that. I also want to create a mastermind group where they want to lead robust organizations from their personal faith-based position. So that one I really want to target men and women who want to live out their faith, want to be godly leaders in the world. It's not just simply that they're going to run nonprofits. I've worked with plenty of nonprofits, and I love them. But I don't want a mastermind group just of nonprofits. Who are the leaders that want to work together and hold each other accountable? Because I think that whether it's coaching or in a mastermind group, I think every leader needs a safe place where they can have candid, confidential conversations. That is so important. People need a safe place. Safe meaning This is a place where you're not going to be judged. We're not going to condemn you. We're not to find fault. We're here to help you go through a reflection process. You discover for yourself what's right or wrong, or what's working, what's not working, and so forth. But where can you have candid conversations about what's working? What do I need to change about my life? What do I need to change about my techniques? Even if it's a little thing, but can you do it in a safe place where no one else is going to know what's said? So it's totally confidential and there's no judgment whatsoever, because that's where change can take place. And so it can happen at two levels: the one-on-one, which I do as a coach with each person, but then also when the group meets, there's another level of, because everybody's got a pledge. Hey, this is whatever said, it's that old phrase, whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Whatever happens in the group stays in the group. That's got to be paramount, again, to be able to help one another. And I think leaders definitely need a place where they can have those type of conversations, where they can bare their souls. And so I think mastermind groups will provide that, particularly when it's a mastermind group where we're a similar background, similar goals. So what are we trying to do? And we're not competitors, so we're not trying to beat out each other in the marketplace. But anyway, so that's one of my goals for the next 6 to 12 months.
That sounds great. It's a good opportunity, like you had mentioned before, to focus on building positively, and focusing on those positive aspects of leadership and building a community of trust. So that sounds like a really cool opportunity.
Well, it is. It is, and I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk about it a little bit and give people an opportunity. If they're interested, they can contact me. Are you going to give people my contact information?
Yep, I will. So one last question before we jump into that. I know we kind of already discussed it slightly. You gave a tip about if someone were starting out, you'd recommend them start under someone else's wing. But any other thoughts on that question? If you had to give a tip to someone who's just at the beginning stages of personal development coaches, what would you say to someone out there?
If you're going to get into coaching and you want to develop as a coach, I would get into a good curriculum that will teach you the listening skills and the question skills. I think those are for a coach, I think those are the two most critical skills. I think the height of good coaching is to be able to ask just the right question with just the right words in just the right tone at just the right time to get the desired effect. Which means, first of all, you got to be able to listen. To listen not only to the words, which you got to pay attention to. What is the message in the words, but what is the message within the emotion? What's the message within the body language and within the tone of voice? So I think listening is not just simply hearing words. Listening is to taking in the sights and sounds of the conversation, so that you perceive what is not verbalized but yet communicated in either tone or body language and so forth. So that and then being able to venture on. Oh, well, as you said that, I noticed the hesitation and uncertainty. Is that true? And that's kind of an example of what you've got to be sensitive to, and then pursue. Be inquisitive. I think that's maybe the third thing is, to be a good coach, you got to be curious. So you got to listen, you got to be curious, and then you got to be able to ask good questions. Helpful, open-ended questions that, again, helps the person reflect and examines what are you really thinking and feeling, and be able to do both. What are you thinking and what are you feeling, and how are those interacting, and where's the and I'd say in asking those questions, you've got to be able to ask questions that keeps the client focused on what they can do for themselves and not always trying to blame somebody else. And that's one of the first things you got to lay down the law as a coach is, I say that a little bit harshly, but you've got to help the client understand, hey, we're here about your change. The only way you're going to influence somebody else to change is to inspire them to change. Now, sometimes you do have to force them because it's in the moment and you've got to have an immediate change. But to have long-lasting change of behavior, people have to become convinced that the new behavior is good for them and there's a reward somehow in it. And usually, so which means at some point in time, there's a change of thinking. And the only way I can change your thinking, either I can change your worldview by changing how you see the world, give you more information, new information, so forth. Or maybe in the combination about not only giving you the information, so it's a cognitive thing, but also experiencing it. The father of modern change, Cotter, in his book, what is it? Heart of Change, talks about people have got to be able to see it, then they got to be able to feel it. So they got to see what the change is going to result in, but they got to feel it. Those two things have got to go together. It's got to be cognitive and emotional. That's when they will change. So as a coach, I think that's one of the things you've got to be, and you're trying to do it by the conversation or the exercises that you do or the readings. I mean, you got to help people come to grips with, I need to change. Maybe it's just I change an assumption. I'm going to see the world just a little bit different. Or maybe it's hope. So one of the things I ask people when I start an engagement, do you want this to be transformational? In other words, you've been told you need massive change of behavior. So we're going to talk about transformation of how you see the world, transformation about how you communicate with people and so forth. Or is it simply performance-based? In other words, you got to get better at a few skills, and we're going to talk about your process skills. So anyway, I think that's what I would encourage you. If you're a new coach, get into a program and look for one that's going to help you learn how to listen, really listen, not just for the words, but listen for the tone and so forth. Be curious, and then learn how to ask good questions.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for that. You've given certainly me a lot to think about, and I'm sure our guests will find a lot of value in that as well. Lastly, I told you we get back to this. What would be the best place for our viewers to find out more about you, what you've got going on? What's your preference? What's the best place for them to reach you?
Well, you either send me an email, and my email is T-E-Davis, just one D, T-E-Davis at Grace, Grace, 4, the number 4, success.com, T-E-Davis at graceforsuccess.com, or send me a text or call 913-306-1499. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure to add that to the show notes as well to make it easy for our viewers. But thank you very much, Ted. That was amazing. Really appreciate your time tonight. And thank you, viewers. If you found this valuable, please like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time on our next episode of Grow For It. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.